Welcome to my YouTube channel, Next Level You. When you rise into a more awakened state of being, something shifts in the way you relate to love. And it's not subtle. It's like you suddenly develop a radar that picks up on every layer of a person, their energy, their wounds, their truth, their intentions, long before the first date is even over. You're no longer fooled by the surface. You're no longer hypnotized by charm. You're no longer captured by the temporary thrill of someone wanting you. You crave something much deeper, something that feels like recognition, not entertainment. And because of that, the world of modern dating begins to feel strangely small, shallow, and almost foreign. Most people out there are still searching for connection from a place of need or emptiness. They're looking for someone to complete them, soothe them, validate them, distract them, or temporarily silence the voice inside that says they're not enough. But when you've awakened, you've already walked through those fires. You've met your pain. You've confronted your shadows. You've held yourself through lonely nights and hard truths. You're not avoiding yourself anymore, so you can't participate in relationships where the other person is still running from themselves. You can feel it when someone is wearing a mask. You can feel it when they're performing. You can feel it when they want the idea of you more than the truth of you. And that makes it almost impossible to settle for anything that lacks depth, intention, and real emotional presence. You've outgrown the chase. You've outgrown inconsistency. You've outgrown the confusion people call chemistry. Instead, you're hungry for transparency, for accountability, for soul-level connection. And that hunger isn't a demand. It's a standard. A standard you earn through the work you've done on yourself. Awakened souls don't reject shallow connections from arrogance. They reject them because they've tasted something real within themselves, and they can't pretend they don't know the difference. You've seen what deep connection feels like when you connect with your own truth. You felt what emotional safety feels like when you show up for yourself. You've experienced what resonance feels like when your inner world is aligned. So when someone shows up without emotional depth, without self-awareness, without the willingness to be honest, you don't judge them. You simply know that your soul can't contract itself to fit inside a relationship that isn't built on truth. And that's why awakened souls often feel like love is hard to find. You're not struggling because you're broken or unlovable. You're not struggling because you're too intense or too much. You're struggling because your soul refuses to downgrade. It refuses to settle for someone who only sees the surface of you. It refuses to play the games that so many people mistake for romance. Your soul is protecting you from relationships that will cost you your peace, your growth, or your self-respect. There's also this unique challenge. When you awaken, your energy becomes more transparent. People can feel your openness, your compassion, your depth. It draws people in, but it also intimidates them. Some love the idea of it, but the reality of being seen, really seen, is too much for those who haven't faced themselves yet. They want the warmth of your light, but they're not ready for the responsibility that comes with standing in it. They want your presence, but not the self-awareness it requires. They want the magic, but not the accountability. And so they pull back or they flake or they disappear. Not because you did something wrong, but because your depth highlights their unfinished work. Awakened souls can feel the gap immediately, the gap between who someone pretends to be and who they really are. And once you can see that, once you can feel that, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. You can't build a relationship on a version of someone they aren't willing to embody. Your soul won't let you. That's what makes the journey feel lonely at times. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for presence. You're not looking for someone who has it all figured out. You're looking for someone who's willing to figure it out with you. Someone who can sit in the fire with you instead of running from the heat. Someone who can hold a conversation that feels like truth instead of performance. Someone who doesn't just want to be loved, but is willing to love in return with depth, with intention, with courage. And when you haven't found that yet, it's easy to feel like love simply doesn't exist for you. But the truth is, you're not meant to find love in the same way you used to. You're meant to meet love at a higher level, a wiser level, a more expansive level. That kind of love doesn't show up quickly, doesn't show up casually. It doesn't show up just because you want it. It shows up when two souls have done enough work to meet one another without fear, without masks, without stories, without conditions. So if love hasn't arrived yet, it's not a punishment. It's protection. It's alignment. It's a sign that your soul is holding space for something that matches who you've become, not who you used to be. Something rooted in truth, not illusion. Something strong enough to meet you at the level you now operate from. And that's why awakened souls can't find love until they find someone who is awakened too. When you start healing yourself, truly healing, not just talking about healing, something profound happens in your relationships. You stop being magnetized to the same patterns, the same wounded dynamics, the same emotional cycles you once mistook for passion. You begin to recognize the difference between intensity and connection, between attraction and attachment, between chaos and chemistry. And in that awakening, you outgrow the very people you used to be compatible with, not because you're better than them, but because you're no longer operating from the same wound. A big part of this journey is understanding that most relationships people enter aren't chosen from wholeness. They're chosen from pain. They're built on familiarity, on unresolved childhood patterns, on hidden needs that never got met. So when you start doing the inner work, when you start breaking those patterns instead of repeating them, you naturally stop aligning with people who still live inside those wounds. It's like you've changed the station and they're still tuned into static. You're speaking from clarity. They're speaking from fear. You're showing up with truth. They're showing up with defense. And the mismatch becomes too loud to ignore. You can feel when someone is still operating from a place of unhealed fear. You can sense when someone is emotionally unavailable before they even admit it. You can tell when someone doesn't know how to love without control or pleasing or withdrawing. And even if a part of you wants to try, wants to help, wants to stay, your healed self won't let you. Your healed self has zero tolerance for the patterns your wounded self would have begged for. This is why awakened souls struggle to find love. You're no longer attracted to dysfunction. You're no longer seduced by potential. You're no longer pulled toward people who are inconsistent or incapable of meeting you. And while that's an incredible sign of growth, it also means the pool of people who can meet you where you are becomes much smaller. Think about how many people approach relationships while carrying emotional baggage they've never unpacked. They bring their past heartbreaks into the present. They bring their trust issues, their avoidance, their jealousy, their insecurity. And because they haven't confronted those parts of themselves, they wind up projecting them onto the person in front of them. When you're awakened, you can feel all of this immediately. You can sense when someone isn't ready to give or receive love. You can tell when someone is building walls instead of bridges. And it's not that you judge them. You just know you can't shrink your emotional intelligence to match someone else's fear. There's also this invisible pressure people feel when they meet someone who's healed. Your presence can be confronting. Your clarity can be intimidating. Your emotional maturity can feel like a mirror reflecting everything they haven't dealt with. And instead of rising to meet you, most people retreat. Not because they don't want love, but because they're not ready for the kind of love that requires growth. When two people operate from different levels of healing, the relationship becomes unbalanced. One person ends up doing the emotional labor. One person becomes the stabilizer. One person becomes the teacher, the forgiver, the one who holds it all together. And that used to be your role. But now your soul refuses to play it again. Your soul is done being the healer in a relationship that's supposed to be a partnership. You're not looking for someone to fix. You're not looking for someone to save. You're not looking for someone to carry. You're looking for someone who has carried themselves, who has walked through their own fire, who has faced their own reflection and chosen to grow. Someone who doesn't need you to shrink so they can feel enough. Someone who doesn't need you to dim your truth so they can avoid theirs. And because you've healed, you now recognize that compatibility isn't about liking the same music or having the same lifestyle. Compatibility is about emotional responsibility. It's about how someone regulates themselves when they're triggered. It's about how someone communicates when they're hurt. It's about how someone shows up when things get difficult, not just when things are easy. That's the level you're operating from now. And until someone meets you there, your soul won't allow you to settle. But here's the deeper truth. Healing strips away false compatibility. It removes the relationships you would have chosen from loneliness, from fear, from habit, from old emotional wounds. It clears out the connections that mirrored your pain instead of your potential. In that clearing, it can feel like nobody is left. It can feel like love disappeared. But what really disappeared were the old versions of love, the ones that cost you yourself. You're not struggling to find love because you're unlovable. You're struggling because You're no longer compatible with what once broke you. You're no longer available for relationships that run on insecurity or avoidance. You're no longer willing to participate in pain disguised as passion. Your healing created a new standard, a new frequency, a new level of alignment. And you will only connect with people who have done enough of their own work to meet you in that space, not pull you out of it. And that's why awakened souls can't find love, because their healing won't let them go back to who they used to be when you become more awake. When you start living from a place of inner truth instead of emotional survival, you begin to experience love in a completely different way. It's not just about attraction anymore. It's not about butterflies or physical chemistry or that rush of excitement that comes when someone new enters your life. Those things are still beautiful, but they're no longer enough. Now you're feeling for something deeper, an energetic alignment, something that resonates beyond words, beyond logic, beyond the mind. And the moment you start living at that level, you stop being able to force yourself into connections that don't match you. There's this misconception in the world that love is primarily physical or emotional. But for awakened souls, love is energetic first. You feel people before you know them. You sense their intentions before they speak. You can tell when someone's energy expands you or contracts you. And once you learn to trust that, you can't unlearn it. You can't pretend you don't feel the difference. You can't override the sensation in your body that says, this isn't aligned, even if the person looks perfect on paper. You ever notice that? Someone checks all the boxes. They're kind, they're attractive, they're intelligent, they're available. And still, something inside you hesitates, something inside you doesn't open, something feels off. That's not fear, that's not insecurity, that's alignment, or the lack of it. And awakened souls can't override misalignment anymore. You've outgrown that ability. In the past, you could force it. You could talk yourself into it. You could negotiate with your intuition. But after awakening, there's a built-in truth detector inside of you, and it's not interested in compromise. This is why awakened souls struggle to find love, because you're no longer looking at who a person appears to be, you're feeling who they really are. And most people, without even realizing it, bring forward layers of fear, unresolved wounds, or emotional blockages that make real connection almost impossible. You can feel their guardedness. You can feel when they're unavailable, even if they say they want love. You can feel when someone's heart is half open, half protected, and you can tell immediately when someone doesn't have the emotional capacity to meet you at the level your soul operates on. You also sense the motives behind their actions. You can feel the difference between love and attachment, between interest and projection, between genuine presence and the desire for validation. Most people don't realize how transparent their energy is. But to an awakened soul, it's as clear as daylight. And the moment you feel that someone is showing up, not from love, but from fear or insecurity or loneliness, you can't pretend it works. You can't fake resonance. You also can't ignore when someone's energy drains you instead of nourishes you. Before awakening, you might have confused that draining feeling with passion or intensity. You might have mistaken emotional spikes for connection. But now you can feel the impact another person's energy has on your nervous system. If someone's energy feels chaotic, unstable, or heavy, it doesn't matter how attractive they are. You feel your heart closing, your body tightening, your intuition whispering, this isn't it. And that awareness becomes a filter you didn't consciously choose but can't ever turn off. Here's the challenge. The kind of alignment awakened souls need isn't common. Most people are still learning how to be present with themselves, let alone with someone else. Most are still acting from patterns they haven't discovered yet. And you can feel every piece of that. You're not looking for a person who's perfect. You're looking for someone who's aligned, someone whose energy meets yours instead of pulling you backward, someone who doesn't drain your growth but expands with you, someone who doesn't need you to shrink or dim or disconnect from your intuition just to maintain the relationship. And because you can sense energy so clearly, you don't fall in love the way you used to. You fall in love with presence, with sincerity, with emotional openness, with someone's ability to stand in their authenticity instead of hiding behind their fears. Your heart responds to truth now, not performance. It responds to alignment, not attraction. That changes the entire dating landscape. It means fewer connections. It means more patience. It means waiting for something that feels like recognition, not excitement. Something that feels like home, not a roller coaster. As your energy aligns more deeply with your purpose, your standards shift. You stop chasing potential. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. You stop allowing misalignment to masquerade as destiny. And that can make you feel like love is hard to find. But what's really happening is that your soul is filtering out everything that would have cost you yourself. You're not unlucky in love. You're not being punished. You're being guided away from anything that isn't meant for the version of you who has awakened, who has grown, who has risen into a deeper level of truth. Love is not gone from your life. It's just being refined. It's being elevated. It's waiting for resonance, for alignment, for someone whose soul speaks the same language yours now speaks. And that's why awakened souls can't find love, because anything less than energetic alignment no longer feels like love at all. There comes a point on the journey of awakening where it feels like everything inside you is expanding, but nothing outside of you is catching up. You're growing, you're healing, you're becoming more self-aware, more grounded, more aligned, and yet love seems farther away than ever. It's almost ironic. You'd think doing the inner work would bring love right to your doorstep, but instead something unexpected happens. You enter a season of inner union, a season where your soul says, before you join with someone else, you need to join with yourself. This isn't a punishment. It's preparation, because when you awaken, you can no longer build relationships from the old version of yourself, the version that was needy, the version that was fearful, the version that abandoned your own boundaries just to keep someone close. That person isn't alive in you anymore. And the universe isn't going to allow you to repeat a cycle you've already learned your way out of. So instead of love rushing in, life gives you space. Space to integrate, space to build a relationship with your own truth, your own intuition, your own purpose. Space to strengthen the parts of you that used to collapse the moment someone showed you attention. Space to stop outsourcing your worth to someone else's voice, someone else's affection, someone else's approval. Space to become whole, not just in theory, but in practice. Most people think awakening is about knowledge. Real awakening is about embodiment. It's about becoming the person you used to look for. It's about learning to give yourself the very things you once begged others to give you: validation, respect, safety, emotional presence, consistency. When you learn to give those things to yourself, something huge shifts. Your relationships stop being a place to fill your emptiness and start becoming a place to express your fullness. But until that shift completes, until you fully integrate that inner union, love can't show up. Not the kind you're meant for anyway. Not the deep, expansive, aligned love your soul is calling in. Because if it arrived too early, you wouldn't be able to receive it. You'd sabotage it, or you'd shrink inside it, or you'd choose a version of love that matches your past instead of your potential. That's what this season is for. It's not the absence of love, it's the upgrading of your capacity for it. And that season can feel incredibly frustrating. It can feel lonely. Sometimes it feels like the universe is ignoring you or withholding something from you. But what's really happening is that you're being recalibrated from the inside out. Your energy is shifting. Your standards are shifting. Your desires are shifting. The way you relate to yourself is shifting. And you need time to stabilize that before opening your heart to someone else. Because here's the truth. Awakened love isn't just emotional. It's spiritual. It's energetic. It's purposeful. It requires two people who are both anchored in themselves, not leaning on each other to prevent themselves from falling. Two people who know how to communicate their needs without collapsing into old patterns. Two people who know how to self-regulate instead of projecting. Two people who know how to hold space for each other's expansion instead of being threatened by it. You're becoming that person, and the universe is making sure the person who comes into your life will meet you at that same level of readiness. That's why the delay exists. Not because love is denied, but because love is being aligned. This inner union phase is also where you learn to stop chasing. You stop needing external validation. You stop looking for someone to rescue you from your loneliness. Instead, you create a life that feeds you. You build friendships that nourish you. You cultivate peace inside your own mind. You learn to trust your intuition again. You reconnect with your passions, your purpose, your power. That's not a placeholder for love. That's the foundation love will build itself on. something else happens in this phase. Your energy becomes clearer. You stop attracting the same wounded partners. You stop entertaining the same unhealthy dynamics. You stop confusing intensity for compatibility. By healing your internal world, you start attracting people from your healed frequency instead of your wounded frequency. But that shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of becoming, a process of aligning, a process of remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. Once that inner union solidifies, something beautiful happens. Love doesn't feel like something you're chasing. It feels like something you're meeting. It enters your life on equal footing and meets you in your truth. It recognizes you, not the version of you that was performing or pleasing or shrinking to fit. And you'll feel it immediately, not as a rush, not as a distraction, but as a resonance, a calm knowing, a deep alignment. But you can't meet that kind of love until you finish meeting yourself. That's the phase you're in. A sacred pause, not a void, an incubation, not a delay, an alignment. You're building the foundation that the right love will stand on for the rest of your life. And that's why awakened souls can't find love, because they're being guided to become the love they're waiting for. And if there's one thing I want you to walk away with, is this: you are not behind. You are not missing out. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Love isn't late in your life. It's aligning with who you're becoming. Every moment you spend rising, healing, growing, shedding, expanding, you're moving closer to the kind of relationship that doesn't just touch your heart, but elevates your soul. So don't doubt the journey. Don't question the timing. Trust the space life is giving you. Trust the person you're becoming. Because when the love that's meant for you finally arrives, it won't confuse you. It won't diminish you. It won't require you to abandon yourself. It will recognize you. It will meet you. It will match you. And it will remind you why every moment of the wait was worth it.